Hi, everyone. I hope you are doing well. We are going to begin shortly in the next few minutes. Thank you for joining us. Hang tight. We're going to start around 6:30, so we're going to let some people come in and we'll begin shortly. Okay, so it is 6:30. We are going to get started. My name is Mike Navarrete. I am one of the marketing associates for CHC, and I'm also going to be moderating tonight's presentation. Thank you for joining us. We are so excited to be hosting community education webinars. Just a few housekeeping rules before we begin. You will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but please do engage with us. If you hover over your screen, you'll see a few features. Do use the chat feature if you have a comment, response, or feedback. And do use the Q&A for all formal questions. So throughout the presentation, do type your questions in the Q&A, and then we're going to do our best towards the end of the presentation to filter through the questions. Before we get started, we just would like to gauge where you all are from. So if you can use the chat feature and tell us the town and the state in which you reside. And then in the meantime, I'm just going to do a brief overview of CHC. So CHC has been privileged to be in the community for almost 70 years, and we provide mental health and educational services for children, teens, and young adults. And this is our vision for our kiddos. We want them to develop grit and resilience, realize their dreams, stop hurting, make friends, and more. And we are committed to making more resources available to more people and removing barriers. And we try to remove barriers to language by having bilingual clinicians and additional staff. And then we also remove barriers to location. We have 3 locations. We have a location in Palo Alto off of Clark Way. We have a location in East Palo Alto called Ravenswood, and we have a location in San Jose off of Kenwood Avenue. And at CHC, we believe in an interdisciplinary approach when it comes to mental health and education, and we really do our best to look at the whole child. And these are our 4 areas of expertise: ADHD, anxiety and depression, learning differences, and autism. We have 4 divisions. We have a clinical services division, which really is a gamut of services that we're able to provide. We have therapy options. We do psychoeducational evaluations. And we have more services there. And then we have 2 schools for kiddos that may have mental health differences, challenges, and or learning differences. And then we also have our community connections division, which is what you're experiencing tonight. And we are a safe, inclusive environment for all people. And then we do have some upcoming webinars, and feel free to check us out here. This is the link to see more of our resources and the upcoming webinars that we do have. We are very honored to have everyone here tonight. I'm going to look at the chat to see where you all are from. So I see a lot of people from the Bay Area, and then a few people outside of California too. So thank you all for joining us. Let's see. Okay, and I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers. We have Patrice Chrysostoma, who is a clinical program manager and licensed psychologist for CHC. And then we also have Madison Sundquist, who is a doctoral psychology intern. So I'll let them take it from here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Patty Chrysostomo, and wanted to thank our community connection staff here at CHC for getting the logistics of this webinar together for us this evening. Madison and I feel very fortunate to be presenting this topic to you. We know that these are quite unusually challenging circumstances given the current state of our community, both locally as well as globally. For us here at CHC, we are in week 6 now of sheltering in place. And we know that our routines as families, for parents, kids, teens alike, have all been disruptive, and that it can be stressful trying to balance competing demands like working from home, learning and teaching from home, physical distancing from our friends and families, and just the sheer uncertainty about the health and wellness and future of the loved one, of the ones that we love, and our broader community. We recognize that it's a choice that you've made to be with us tonight. So thank you as well for thinking about mental health and wellness. It is just so critical to focus on this, especially during these times. So welcome.
To give you an overview of what to expect for this evening, we're going to start by talking about stress and its impact on the body. And then we're going to focus the rest of the presentation on diving in deep to mindfulness. We're going to talk about its benefits, particularly in relation to stress reduction. And we're going to take you through some exercises that you can do as well as you can do with your children. We'll also mention how our title is slightly misleading. Mindfulness activities are not necessarily meant to have a goal like stress reduction. They can actually be very unpleasant or uncomfortable or make us attend to very painful emotions or physical sensations. But we do know that they have long-term associations with reductions in stress. So we hope that providing all of this information will be useful to you, but there's really no better way to learn mindfulness than to actually practice it. So throughout the presentation, we're going to walk you through some different exercises, different types of mindfulness activities that you can kind of put in your toolbox to do with you and your kids. And we're going to start off with a progressive muscle relaxation exercise.
We're going to jump right in here. We are actually quite fortunate in some respects to be doing this webinar with you in the comfort of your own home. Practitioners say that mindfulness is like strengthening or developing a muscle. And with that, the more that you practice, the more readily accessible mindfulness will be for you and your family to use as a tool. So as Madison mentioned, today our first activity together will be a progressive muscle relaxation. So for this activity, go ahead and find a comfortable position. You can either sit or lie down. Just make sure that you are warm enough and that you are comfortable. Feel free to let your hands rest loosely in your lap or by your side. And if you're comfortable, feel free to close your eyes or affix your gaze to a spot that is not moving anywhere between 6 and 12 feet away from you. And just become aware of your breathing. And notice how your abdomen rises and falls with each breath. Now take a long, slow, deep breath in through your nose, all the way down into your stomach. Hold the breath for just a moment, and then exhale through your mouth. Allow your breath to carry away all stress and tension as the air floods out of your lungs. Take another slow breath in through your nose. Fill your lungs completely. Hold it for a moment and release the breath through your mouth. Empty your lungs completely. Feel that your body has already undergone a change. The tension in your body has begun to loosen and subside. During this activity, I will ask you to tense various muscles throughout your body. Please do this without straining. You don't need to exert yourself. Just simply contract each muscle firmly but gently as you breathe in. If you feel uncomfortable at any time, you can simply relax and breathe normally. First, bring your awareness to your feet and to your toes. Breathe in deeply through your nose, and as you do, gradually curl your toes down and tense the muscles in the soles of your feet. Hold your breath for just a few seconds, and then release the muscles in your feet as you breathe out. Feel the tension in your feet wash away as you exhale. Notice how different your feet feel when tensed and when they're relaxed. Now I invite you to bring your awareness to your lower legs, to your calf muscles. As you draw in a nice deep breath, point your toes up towards your knees and tighten these muscles. Hold just for a moment and let those muscles go limp as you exhale. In a moment, you'll tense the muscles in the front of your thighs. If you're lying down, you can do this by trying to straighten your legs. You'll feel the muscles pulling your kneecaps upwards. If you are seated, you can tense these muscles by pushing your heels down onto the floor. Now take a deep breath in and tense the muscles in your thighs. Hold for just a moment, and then release everything. As you do this, the blood flow to your muscles increases, and you might notice a warm tingling sensation. Enjoy this feeling of soothing relaxation in your thighs. Take another breath, and this time, gradually tighten all the muscles in your legs, from your feet to your calves to your thighs. Do this in whatever way feels natural and comfortable to you, and hold it. And now, release all these large, strong muscles. Enjoy the sensation of release as you become even more deeply relaxed. Now bring awareness to your stomach. Draw in a nice, deep breath and tighten these muscles. Imagine you are trying to touch your belly button to your spine. Now release your breath and let your muscles relax. Notice the sensation of relief that comes from letting go. I invite you to bring your awareness now to the muscles in your back. As you slowly breathe in, arch your back slightly and tighten these muscles. Now release your breath and let your muscles relax. I invite you now to give attention to your shoulder muscles and the muscles in your neck. As you slowly draw in a nice deep breath, pull your shoulders up towards your ears and squeeze these muscles firmly. Now breathe out completely and allow your contracted muscles to go loose and limp. Now feel the tension subside as you relax and breathe out. Feel the heaviness in your body now. Enjoy this feeling if you can. Feel yourself becoming heavier and heavier. Feel yourself becoming more and more deeply relaxed. You are calm. You are secure. You are at peace. You are enough. As you breathe in, now raise your wrists towards your shoulders and tighten the muscles in your upper arms. Hold that breath and that contraction for just a moment, and then gently lower your arms and breathe all the way out. You may feel a warm sensation in your muscles when you tighten them. And feel how relaxing it is to release that tightness and to breathe away all tension. Now bring awareness to your forearms. As you breathe in, curl your hands inwards as though you were trying to touch the inside of your elbows with your fingertips. Now feel this tension subside as you relax and breathe out. Take another breath in, and now tightly clench your fists. When you finish breathing in, hold for just a few seconds, and then release. Notice any feelings of buzzing or throbbing. Your hands are becoming very soft and relaxed. Now tighten the muscles in your face by squeezing your eyes shut and clenching your lips together. As you do, breathe in fully. Hold it. Now breathe out and relax all your facial muscles. Feel your face softening. Go ahead and now bring your attention back to your breath. Listen to the sound of your breathing as you inhale and exhale, and enjoy the lovely, warm sensation of physical relaxation. If you have the time, feel free to just sink in. To this space. And as you're ready, go ahead and bring your attention back to the room. And back to your screen. You may begin to note the difference in how your body feels now compared to when we first started. And go ahead and transition back to Madison.
Now that you're all nice and relaxed, we thought it would be a great time to talk about stress and its effect on the body. So I'd like you to take a minute, and before we get into talking about how mindfulness can lead to reductions in stress, we wanted to start with a quick description of what stress actually is. So I'm going to ask you all for a moment to pretend that you're a zebra. You're playing in a field, having a lovely time, it's sunny outside, but all of a sudden in the corner of your eye, you notice a lion hiding behind a bush. The lion starts chasing you and you feel stressed and you run for your life. To kind of help you survive, your body makes a number of changes to help you run as fast as you can away from the lion. It engages what we call the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the autonomic nervous system that sometimes is referred to as the fight or flight response. So adrenaline and cortisol are secreted in your brain, your pupils dilate so you can really see where you're going, your heart starts to beat faster, your lungs increase their oxygen intake, your muscles contract, and all of those parts of your body that aren't absolutely necessary to engage right now, like your digestive system, start to slow down so that all of the energy in your body can be redirected to where it's really needed right now. So congratulations, you ran away fast enough and you survived, you escaped the lion, and now you start to feel calm, get back to your daily life, chill out, the threat's gone, your pupils constrict, your heart rate slows, your lungs reduce how much oxygen they're intaking, muscles relax. So your body's engaging the parasympathetic nervous system now, or the rest and digest system. It's getting back to catching up on all of those activities in your body that had been put on hold while you're escaping the lion. So our stress response makes a lot of sense in the wild, but unfortunately, most of us face stressors that don't have like a discrete beginning and a discrete end. The coronavirus situation right now is kind of a good example of this. None of us knows exactly when it's going to end, and we're probably experiencing like persistent low-level stress at the minimum right now, which in the long term could interfere with our health. So we're all glad that you are joining us today for this presentation. And you might be thinking at this point that we want to get rid of all of our stress. It sounds like a terrible thing to be going through all the time. But we saw in the zebra example that our stress response is actually very useful, and it can keep us alive in situations like that. We also know, though, that having too little stress or too much stress is bad for ourselves. We call this the Yerkes-Dodson law. And as you can see in this figure, stress and performance have this relationship where if we have too little stress, we would just be sleeping. We wouldn't have motivation to do anything. If we were a zebra and a lion started chasing us, we would say, oh, cool, that's great, and just kind of go about our business until we got eaten up. So some stress is good for us. We need a little bit of stress to get things done. Unfortunately, many of us end up on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we have too much stress, and that can also interfere with our performance. It can lead to fatigue, burnout, feeling just overwhelmed at work or at school. We can start to make careless mistakes because our mind is so preoccupied with the stress that we're experiencing. And we also know that prolonged stress can lead to long-term health issues and chronic diseases. So the goal is not to avoid stress completely. It's just to get to a manageable level of stress. So kind of the peak of the shape right here to get us to a place where we're optimally performing. So the next mindfulness exercise we're going to do is a deep breathing practice. Deep breathing is actually one of the best ways to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest system, because it triggers to your brain that there's no immediate threat. Everything's okay right now. So this can be a really useful skill to use throughout your day. We thought that it would be helpful, since we know there are a lot of parents here with us, to talk through some of the ways that we engage in deep breathing with our younger clients in therapy. So what I'm going to have you start out by doing is just take a few deep breaths. Nose for 4 counts. And then breathe out through your mouth for another 4 counts. And as you're breathing, just get into a straight, comfortable position. Give your lungs the ability to expand as much as they need to take those deep breaths. And I want you to imagine a flower. And I want you to imagine that you're holding a flower in one of your hands. It can be whatever type of flower you like. And imagine that you're holding a candle in your other hand. So the next time you breathe in, I want you to breathe in as if you're smelling the flower. And imagine whatever scent the flower you're holding might have. And as you breathe out for 4 counts, blow out the candle with your breath. You can imagine it's one of those trick candles that takes a little bit to make it fully blow out. Just try to do this one more time. Breathe in for 4 counts, smell your flower. And breathe out for 4 counts and blow out your candle. So now I'm going to have you imagine that you're a bumblebee. And you're going to take a big breath through your nose. And when you breathe out, make a buzzing sound like you're a bee, like zzz. And try to make that sound last for as long as you can. And now breathe in again. Try to get enough air in your lungs so that we can make a really long buzzing sound. And buzz like a bee. So lastly, imagine that you have a colorful balloon to inflate. So you're going to breathe in through your nose, get a lot of air in. We want to fill up this balloon. And breathe out and imagine air blowing into the balloon and it start to expanding. And now breathe in again. The balloon's not quite full. And blow some more air into that balloon. It's getting much bigger. You're doing a great job. And breathe in again for 4 counts through your nose. You need 1 more breath to fill this balloon. And breathe out and imagine your balloon getting really big. Now tie up your balloon, and as you're breathing in, you can breathe out and kind of blow the balloon up into the sky. And just keep kind of getting it into the sky. And as you keep breathing, imagine that your balloon is floating away until you can't see it anymore. Okay, now we can bring ourselves back and talk about what mindfulness actually is.
So we thought that an actual definition of mindfulness may be helpful for us to create a framework for understanding and using this potentially quite powerful tool for you. So John Kabat-Zinn may be a name that is familiar to you. He is a professor, a practitioner, a researcher, and a founder of a treatment approach called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he defines mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So let's break that down. So on purpose, with intention, and tuning into what we're thinking, feeling, and experiencing. And this is in stark contrast to doing things automatically or habitually, or making decisions while being in autopilot. And I'm sure we can think about times where we've done something without paying really close attention, like walking into a room and forgetting why exactly we walked into the room in the first place, or losing several hours in an afternoon, or staying up way too late because somehow we slid into binge watching a show on Netflix. Mindfulness is also staying within the present moment. So not thinking about what's happened in the past or focusing on what might happen in the future. It's the here and now. It's the noticing of the fact that our brains are quite busy and filled, and that the thoughts and feelings that might come up about the past or the future or things that we have to do while we're trying to be in the moment will come up. But it's not getting stuck on that thought or that feeling. And then lastly, non-judgmentally. What that means is without placing labels, either negative or positive, about the thoughts or feelings that we have as they come into our minds. So we can think about mindfulness as a process of allowing experiences rather than suppressing or avoiding or trying to change them. And it's fluid. It's not hanging on to a particular moment and wishing that it wouldn't change. So to illustrate some of the behaviors associated with mindfulness, we can begin to check in with ourselves. And so here we have the items of a research measure. It's called the Mindfulness Attention Awareness Scale. And it's by Brown and Ryan from the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center. And feel free to follow along as I review these items in this measure, and feel free to conduct your own self-assessment internally. And don't worry, you don't need a paper or pencil to do this for the purposes of this presentation. These items, I should also say, are not comprehensive of what mindfulness is or is not, but merely just examples of how mindfulness can appear in daily life. I should also note that when using this for the purposes of mindfulness research, the authors use a 1 to 6 Likert scale at the bottom, indicating how frequently or how infrequently individuals have of each of these experiences. And so as you're following along with me, try thinking about your actual experiences rather than what you think your experience should be. So number 1, I could be experiencing some emotion and not be conscious of it until some time later. 2, I break or spill things because of carelessness, not paying attention or thinking of something else. 3, I find it difficult to stay focused on what's happening in the present. 4, I tend to walk quickly to get where I'm going without paying attention to what I experience along the way. 5, I tend to not notice my feelings of physical tension or discomfort until they really grab my attention. 6, I forget a person's name almost as soon as I've been told it for the first time. 7, it seems I'm running on automatic without much awareness of what I'm doing. 8, I rush through activities without being really attentive to them. 9, I get so focused on the goal I want to achieve that I lose touch with what I'm doing right now to get there. 10, I do jobs or tasks automatically without being aware of what I'm doing. 11, I find myself listening to someone with one ear, doing something else at the same time, also known as multitasking. 12, I drive places on automatic pilot and then wonder why I went there. 13, I find myself preoccupied with the future or the past. 14, I find myself doing things without paying attention. And 15, I snack without being aware that I'm eating.
Now that we've kind of seen how mindfulness affects such a broad range of things in our life, we thought we would jump into kind of describing how different people conceptualize mindfulness. A lot of people have written and spoken about mindfulness, and we thought that we would present kind of 2 different conceptualizations of mindfulness to you today. The first one we're going to talk about is from a type of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy, created by Marsha Linehan. And she defines 3 different ways that we can be mindful: observing, describing, and participating. So observing is simply noticing what's going on around and inside you in the present moment. So for example, looking out your window and simply observing the environment without trying to put words to what you're seeing. It also involves noticing your sensations and noticing your feelings. So that means even attending to painful emotions. And that's one of those times when mindfulness might not be the most pleasant activity of your day. Describing means to actually put words or label your experiences, but without applying any judgments or interpretations to them. So for example, if you were to take a look at a person and you see the corners of their lips turn down, I think our natural inclination is to say they're frowning or they're upset. But frown and upset are actually interpretations or judgments. When we're describing in a mindful way, all we really know is that the corners of their lips are turned down. So we're simply describing exactly what our senses perceive. Participating is fully throwing yourself into the moment, into the activity that you're doing. So think about professional athletes who talk about being so engrossed in the game that they're kind of not attending to the boos or cheers in the crowd. They're just fully living in the moment, and that allows them to be very focused on what they're doing and to respond to what's happening around them so that they can be effective in how they play. So observing, describing, and participating are all ways that we kind of notice and allow experiences without trying to change them. Dr. Linehan also gives us guidance on how to be mindful or how to observe, describe, and participate in a mindful way. So she talks about doing these things non-judgmentally. So I talked about that before, not interpreting what we're observing, describing, not judging what we're doing. That comes in a lot with the participating aspect. So if you're doing something silly, it doesn't matter. Mindfulness is not the time to judge yourself. She also mentions doing things one mindfully, so not multitasking, like I'm sure all of the parents are being asked to do right now. Your parent, your teacher, your coach, I'm sure many of you are actually multitasking while watching this webinar right now. When we're being mindful, we're focusing on one thing at a time. And the other important thing to note about that is that that means that we're not observing, describing, and participating at once. These activities we're doing one at a time. So you can alternate between observing and describing, but you're only doing one of these things at once. And finally, with effectiveness means that you're slowing down enough to be effective in responding to your environment. It's kind of a vehicle through which you can, take a step back, make a good, effective decision. It's in contrast to doing things out of habit or kind of going on automatic pilot, or letting what's going on around you affect how you're responding without you having control or thoughtfulness about it. So the second way we thought we would describe mindfulness is by Zidal Siegel. And he talks about having two states or modes of mind. So doing mode and being mode. Doing mode is the really goal-oriented type of mindset that we have. The mind is traveling from the past to the future, gathering information to solve problems, come up with creative solutions. And doing mode also has what we call a discrepancy monitor, which is when we're noticing the difference between how things are and how we want them to be or how we think they should be. This discrepancy monitor is very useful. It helps us make changes, make progress, meet our goals. But doing mode and our discrepancy monitor have this lovely tendency to kind of take on tasks that are not too good for them. So we call this driven doing. So when doing mode takes on a task that it can't accomplish or tries to change something that can't be changed. So an example would be if a long-term relationship just ended and driven doing is trying to fix it, but it's not a fixable situation. So you can see how kind of focusing on the difference between how things are and how you want them to be could actually affect your mood and make it more negative. Or if you're in that driven doing mode and trying to change something that can't be changed, that's going to have harmful effects on your mental health. So in contrast with doing mode, we have being mode. So being mode is a state of mind where we're just accepting, allowing, noticing our experiences, feeling no pressure to change them. And our thoughts and our feelings, we're conceptualizing as just kind of passing events in the mind that we notice and kind of watch float away like clouds or like leaves on a stream. And because of this, when we're in being mode, our thoughts and our feelings aren't triggering action. So being mode helps us to avoid acting out of habit or acting impulsively. Both of these states of mind are really useful. There isn't like a bad state of mind and a good state of mind. Although my guess is that many of us exist in doing mode much more than we exist in being mode. And mindfulness just helps us become more aware of what mode we're in so that we can more actively kind of choose the mode that would be most helpful in a given situation. And mindfulness also helps us recognize when we're in that driven doing state of mind.
So as you're sitting here with us listening, you might be thinking, gosh, mindfulness sounds really challenging. And, you know, to be quite frank, it can be at times, depending on the state that we're in, the amount of stress that we've been carrying, and how much practice we've had with mindfulness in the past. And yet, while mindfulness can be challenging at times, we also wanted to dispel some myths that may be out there. So first, mindfulness is not always quiet or still. It can be active, it can be participative. It can be something like drawing, singing, being in the zone while playing a sport, as Madison shared. Nor does it have to be meditative or a formal yoga practice. It can truly be any activity, like playing or eating. Mindfulness also does not strive for perfection, and it can be a place to let go of judgment of yourself, of others. It can be a place for compassion. And mindfulness is not always formal. It can be integrated into your life, like mindfully washing dishes or mindfully brushing your teeth. So that might include noticing the physical sensations of the toothpaste foaming and tingling in your mouth, or the bristles on your toothbrush, or the smell of the minty toothpaste. And nor is mindfulness always relieving. Mindfulness can sometimes bring up painful or less desirable thoughts or emotions that have been pushed down or ignored for various reasons. And by slowing down enough, we might increase our awareness of these feelings and thoughts. And it can be through the mechanism of awareness and acknowledgement that there are challenges that one can actually begin to work through those challenges. So with that said, let's go ahead and try to transition and practice another mindfulness activity. And here we'll be doing a guided imagery activity. So go ahead and if you feel comfortable, close your eyes or fix your gaze on a particular spot in the room that is not moving. And take a few slow, smooth breaths. With each breath, breathe in relaxation and breathe out any worries or stress. Invite yourself to let go of the tension in your body. Allow yourself to slow down. Feel the pace of your heart and lungs becoming slower. Feel your body sinking more and more deeply into relaxation. Give yourself this time. Everything else can wait. Allow yourself to quiet, enjoy the feeling of letting go. And now imagine that you are on a long, sandy beach by a sapphire-colored ocean. The sky is blue and wide. The waves are gently breaking on the shore. Slowly, the waves retreat back out to sea, only to be replaced by other waves working their way up the beach, and then slowly retreating back out to sea again. With each sound of the waves coming in and going out, you find yourself feeling more and more relaxed and at peace. Far off in the distance, you can hear the faint sound of birds. You watch them glide through the sky, gracefully swoop down into the sea, and then fly off once again. Puffy white clouds very slowly drift across the sky. The sun feels warm and comforting on your skin. You take a moment to enjoy the warmth on your face. Close your eyes and take a slow, deep breath. You can smell the salt from the sea. Feel the warm air coming in and out of your body. You feel your body begin to get very heavy. It feels almost as though you're sinking into the warmth of the sand. You may feel more and more at ease and content. For a few moments more, let yourself enjoy the sights and sounds of this beautiful day on the beach. The gently breaking of the waves, the smell and taste of the sea, the sounds of the birds in the distance, the warmth of the sun on your body. All of these sights, sounds, and smells leave you feeling calm and relaxed. Let yourself continue to drift. Become aware of how relaxed your body and mind might feel right now. And remind yourself that you can create these feelings on your own at any time. Now take a moment to scan through your body. Discover any tension that you are holding. Then inhale relaxation into that area and exhale the tension. Know that you can come back to this peaceful beach in your mind as often as you like, or you can create your own place. Let this place recharge your mind and body. Stay here for a few more moments. And as you're ready, you can bring your attention back to the room, returning to the present moment. Okay. So before we transition back to Madison, I wanted to leave you with a quote from Dr. Kabat-Zinn. Why be mindful? This kind of attention nurtures greater awareness, clarity, and acceptance of present moment reality. It wakes us up to the fact that our lives unfold only in moments. If we're not fully present for many of those moments, we may not only miss what is most valuable in our lives, but also fail to realize the richness and the depth of our possibilities for growth and transformation.
So in addition to helping us kind of fully experience our lives and our moments, mindfulness helps us access something that we refer to in dialectical behavior therapy as wise mind. So Dr. Linehan kind of describes 3 different states of mind: reasonable mind, emotion mind, and wise mind. Our reasonable mind uses hard facts and figures, data, in making decisions and problem solving. Whereas our emotion mind cares a little bit more about our feelings, others' feelings, how others might respond to us. And our wise mind kind of makes sure that we're accessing both types of information in order to make the most effective decisions. So to give an example, think about the decision right now that some people are being forced to make about whether or not to end the shelter-in-place order. Our reasonable mind might prioritize numbers, things like amount of personal protective equipment, number of ICU beds available in the hospitals, or how quickly the virus is spreading. Our emotion mind, on the other hand, might be more concerned about things like fear of the virus, or fear of loved ones getting the virus, or just being sick and tired of being stuck indoors. So our wise mind would consider all of that information in making that decision. So I think we're all hoping that the people who are in charge of making that decision, I do not envy them, are accessing their wise mind, and mindfulness would be a good way to get there. So mindfulness is just a really good way to kind of make sure that you're in a place where you're accessing all of the different information to make good decisions. And on a more practical level, mindfulness helps us kind of slow down, take a step back, assess the situation, and allows us to have best interactions with our loved ones and our family, and also kind of give us the presence of mind to use all of the tools that we have in our toolbox to have the most effective interactions with others. So we're lucky now in that mindfulness has gotten pretty popular. So we've got a lot of really large research studies that have demonstrated very robust effects of mindfulness on a number of different things. So mindfulness interventions have been studied on school-age children, adolescents, adults, as well as specific populations. So parents, children with anxiety and depression, children with ADHD or learning disorders, adolescents with chronic pain. And benefits have been shown for all of these different groups. They've looked at a number of different outcome measures, and mindfulness has been shown to improve executive functioning. So that's like our self-regulatory abilities, our ability to problem solve, inhibit inappropriate behaviors, shift our attention from one task to another, get organized and make plans. It's also been shown to improve quality of life, our physical health, physical functioning, and enhance parent-child relationships. Interventions have also been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression among children, parents, adults, and also reduce parenting stress. I think one of the coolest parts about this parenting stress research is the fact that not only did they show that the mindfulness intervention was beneficial for the kids and beneficial for the parents, but when parents showed reductions in stress, that actually further improved children's behavior. So there's kind of this like domino effect of things just getting better and better with practicing mindfulness interventions. So before we get into looking through mindfulness research, we thought we would do a little exercise related to gratitude.
Just a quick comment to everyone. Again, this is Mike Navarrete, one of the moderators. If you all have any questions, please do use the Q&A. We're going to take questions in the next 10 or so minutes. So thank you all.
Thanks, Mike. So in dialectical behavior therapy, we talk about the idea of dialectics, the idea that two things that seem to be opposites can actually both be true, both be valid at the same time. So, I think the current circumstances that we find ourselves in, sheltering in place, I think is a nice example of the ultimate dialectic right now, that sheltering in place is challenging. And we have so many things that we can still be grateful for. So for our last practice of the evening, I wanted to walk you through an exercise that draws on a guided meditation courtesy of the Greater Good in Action Science Center at the University of California, Berkeley. This is a meditation created by Dr. Kathy Kemper, who is the director at Ohio State University, College of Medicine's Center for Integrative Health and Wellness. So gratitude practice can be used to promote a positive mood, hope, and resilience. And as we experience positive emotions like gratitude or loving kindness and compassion, our awareness broadens and our creativity and problem-solving capacities blossom, and we can become more effective in whatever we choose to do. So let's sit upright and find ourselves in a comfortable, stable position where you can feel fully supported again, where your back, neck, and head are straight, or you can lie down in a comfortable place. And allow your eyes to gently close or maintain a soft focus, gazing 6 to 12 feet in front of you. And take a slow, deep breath to bring yourself to the present moment. And begin the process of feeling more peaceful and centered. Breathe into your belly so it expands as you breathe in and gets smaller as you breathe out. And take a moment or two to mentally scan your body again for any areas where there's any tightness, tension, soreness. Breathe your warm, oxygen-filled breath into that area. And as you breathe out, let the tension release. Notice any worries, fear, anger, irritation, jealousy, or judgment. Just breathe into those emotions, noting them, allowing them to flow out as you breathe out. And another breath into any uncomfortable emotions. And as you breathe out, release them. Now any thoughts of memories, plans, associations, anything other than just being here, breathing. Just breathe into those thoughts. And as you breathe out, allow the thoughts to flow out with the breath. And now that our bodies, feelings, thoughts may be a little clearer, a bit more spacious and open, we can begin to focus on the events, experiences, people, pets, or possessions for which we feel grateful. So first, recall that if you're participating in this webinar with us, you already have several marvelous gifts. The gift of life itself. Someone gave birth to you, fed you as an infant, changed your diaper, clothed you, bathed you, taught you to speak and to understand. You have the gift of hearing, so you can hear and learn, whether it's the song of a bird, the notes of a band, voices, the sound of your own breath flowing in and out. The gift of a heartbeat, steady, regular, moment after moment. Now think about all the things that we have today that make our lives easier and more comfortable than they were for our great-grandparents. We flip a switch and a light appears. We turn a tap and clean, drinkable water flows. We adjust a thermostat and a room grows warmer or cooler. We have a roof to keep us dry when it rains, walls to keep the cold wind out, windows to let in light, screens to keep out insects. We have access to machines that wash our clothes, and we have clothes to wear, places to store them. There are machines that store our food at just the right temperature and help us cook it without having to gather wood. We have indoor plumbing. We have libraries that have thousands of books and recordings, free for anyone to borrow and read. And now take a moment to reflect on all the thousands of people who've worked hard, some without knowing you at all, to make your life easier and more pleasant. Some who plant, grow, and harvest your food. Some who transport that food to market. A team of people who make the roads and railways that make it easier to transport the food. Another team who maintains those vehicles, drivers, loaders, and unloaders. People who take the time to design the stores, the shelves, the packaging that keeps the food safe and allows you to find what you need. The Postal Service, someone who sorts the mail and others who deliver it. Those who maintain the servers so you can get and send an email and access the internet. Those who design operations and systems for gathering, sorting, and disposing of our trash and recycling. Those who gather news stories and photos, and those who create the many mechanisms by which the news can reach you. All those who play sports, create art and music, plays or poems or films to entertain and uplift you. And most of these are people you have never met or barely know. Now consider the people and pets you know who enrich your life. Those who smile at you and cheer you on. Those family, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, peers, ancestors who worked so hard so you could live well, friends who support you when you need a shoulder or hand. Take a moment to reflect on your own reasons for feeling grateful in this moment. There is so much to feel grateful for in this moment now. Gratitude fills our hearts and minds, uplifting our spirit. When you finish, you can notice the feeling of your body and breath in this place. Rest quietly for a few moments, noticing how you feel throughout your body, emotions, thoughts, compared to before we started. No judging, just noticing. With practice, you can find yourself feeling grateful easily wherever you are. Know that you can draw on the strength of gratitude whenever you wish. And let's now turn our attention back to the room and to the webinar. And I would encourage you to use our webinar chat feature to just jot down a couple things. What are some things that you are grateful for? Okay, so we assume that by virtue of your being here with us tonight, that those in the audience may have preschoolers or school-age kids or preteens or teenagers. So we wanted to share some practical ideas about how we might increase the likelihood of our children using mindfulness strategies. So deep breathing, as Madison said, is one of the best ways to access the parasympathetic nervous system. And we can capitalize on our kids' vast imagination to facilitate them learning to take control of stress by taking deep breaths. So Madison walked us through bumblebee breaths and flower candle breathing. You can also find videos online if you search for the term rainbow breaths. Basically what this is matching breathing and movement of body, and also visualizing breathing in and breathing out different colors in the shape of a rainbow. When working with clients, I've also really enjoyed practicing pizza breathing. Here you can encourage kids to imagine that there's a hot slice of pizza on a plate in front of them with all of their favorite toppings. And as you breathe in, you're inhaling, taking in all the delicious smells of the ingredients, like, ooh, now I smell the sharpness of the cheese. And as you breathe out, your big exhales are helping you to cool that pizza down faster so you can enjoy it sooner. And you can do a couple of rounds of that. And to modify the progressive muscle relaxation that I did with you all earlier, we can utilize more concrete examples when doing this with kids. Like for relaxing your hands and arms, you can imagine squeezing a lemon. For your arms and shoulders, you can pretend like you're a cat and kind of stretching your arms out in front of you. And for feet and toes, you can imagine squishing into a muddy puddle. And for your face and nose, you can imagine that a fly just landed on your nose and you're trying to get them off by squishing and scrunching your nose really hard and relaxing. There are also activities called body scans where you can utilize stillness and attending to different sensations in various body parts. And so this is a great resource. What we wanted to bring your attention to the UCLA Mindfulness Awareness Research Center. So the website is below. There are also techniques called grounding techniques, which are ways that we can help our kids to develop the mindfulness muscle by practicing our observe and describe skills. And so we can begin to utilize self-soothing techniques by using our 5 senses. So for example, you can coach your child to identify 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they might feel with their sense of touch, 3 things that they can hear, 2 things that they can smell, 1 thing that they can taste. Anchoring is also the simplest way to meditate by finding an anchor to stay in the present moment. You can also imagine that you yourself are an anchor and that the thoughts and feelings are just waves kind of passing by you while you're anchoring in the present. And then lastly, who doesn't love those good old I Spy books or the game I Spy? This is a great way to harness your observation and participation skills. And so now that we are currently sheltering in place, I personally have enjoyed taking a lot more walks outside with my toddler. And when we're out, we talk about listening to the sound of crunchy sand underneath our feet as we're walking on asphalt. And then we may encounter sand or grass and just the difference in the sound of our footsteps. And with teens, you can engage in mindful walking by going on walks with them, encouraging them to think about the experience of feeling the wind on their face, transferring weight from the left foot to the right foot, and so forth. And you might enjoy doing this along with them and just being in silence together as you're taking your walk. There's also mindful eating that we can certainly do. And what this involves is really just the slowing down to notice each and all of the experiences associated with eating. So you can try to do this with a small food item that your kid enjoys, like dried cranberries or a small hard candy that slowly changes over time, like an M&M. With mindful eating, there are a couple of different stages. So you can begin to attend to the different observations and sensations that might come up. First, when just merely looking at the item, then touching and smelling. And this all occurs before you actually put the food in your mouth. Then the noticing of like what comes up when you do put the food item in your mouth, but not chewing it. So resisting then the urge to begin chewing and swallowing. Noticing, for example, if you are using the candy, what happens to the texture as it starts to melt away? What are the changes in the flavors? Thinking about how the muscles in your face, your tongue work really carefully to do something so simple that we don't pay attention to, eating. And then when we're actually eating, the sensations that go along with chewing, what you might hear, what you might smell. And then when you're done with that small morsel of food, pausing before you start eating the next bite. So you can perhaps begin to understand why mindful eating has been a fairly successful technique to help adults to lose weight, if that is a goal of theirs, or to curb overeating, and to address more clinical concerns like binge eating behaviors. And then guided imagery is something that we practice today.
So because mindfulness has been getting so popular and well known, it's been integrated into a number of different types of therapy that we've listed a few on the screen here. So if these are things that you're interested in, we would encourage you to talk to your child's therapist or your own therapist. You will be getting, I think that we will be posting this presentation afterwards, so we're not going to spend too much time on these specific resources because you'll be able to access them later. But we wanted to point you in the direction of some books and apps and other things that we or other clinicians have found useful in working with children and parents. There are lots of different great books on mindfulness for kids. So Sitting Still Like a Frog or Alpha Breaths teaches kids different way to breathe, where they're kind of mimicking different animals with different letters of the alphabet. There are also some great books on mindful parenting. These are a few of the apps. There are many out there. These we know have specific mindfulness activities that are catered more toward children, teenagers and younger children. And finally, we're lucky enough to have some areas in our own area where there are different mindfulness activities or classes. So Palo Alto Medical Foundation and art mindfulness programs. So thank you so much. This is the end of our formal talk, and we look forward to answering questions.
Thank you, everyone. And we do have a survey, if you all don't mind completing this at the end. I'll drop the link in the chat so everyone has access to the link. But just to read off some responses that we got for what people are grateful for. Someone said sunshine, our free community ed webinars. The room that I have, my mom and my family, grateful for a new day. Having my young adult, homeschooling my young adult makes me feel joyful. Someone also said my family, good health, and connecting with my students virtually. And another person wrote grateful that we could all be safe. My family and I can be safe at home. So those are some of the responses that we got. Thank you all for providing your responses to us through our chat. But yeah, we do have a list of questions, so we'll try to knock these off. The first one that we received is, what is the best exercise when you feel you are stressed?
I think the best exercise, honestly, is the one that works best for you. I think part of mindfulness is just trying out a lot of different things and seeing what feels good, or what helps you attune most to the present, because different ones work for different people. I know like Headspace, for example, has a number of different like guided meditations, but for other people, participating activities, so if we think of like observe, describe, participate, activities that are more active and involving the body might be more helpful.
So yeah, just to add, I would say experiment and try out a variety of mindfulness techniques. And, depending on how either you as an adult are feeling in that moment or how your kids are feeling in that moment, a technique that you think kind of bombed that first time around or did not feel as successful the first time around, if you try it at a later time, you may actually be in a different place to experience something different. So, I would also add practicing mindfulness or using some of these techniques when you're calm or calmer may be a nice way to kind of work through the logistics of the activity itself. And the more that you practice mindfulness techniques, the more that, like a muscle, you can use these techniques in a way that actually feels relaxing, if that is the state that you want to find yourself in. So practice can be very, very helpful.
Wonderful. So our next question is, I'm curious how to do this with very young children, specifically ages 2 to 4. They sometimes are bursting with energy and it is difficult to rein them in to relax in the moment.
Madison, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of luck with some of the more active breathing activities for around the ages of like 3 and 4. So Alpha Breaths is a great book. It's kind of catered for that like preschool age range. And I think, like I was kind of mentioning before, those participating activities where you're really kind of throwing yourself into the moment, into a game, can be great. And I feel like younger children are actually much better at being mindful than we are. They tend to just be really aware and kind of living in the moment. So that's definitely a plus.
Awesome. We have a young child who has anxiety. In order to help improve her behavior, would it be more beneficial for her to practice mindfulness, or for us as parents to, as a way to reduce our parental anxiety?
I would say all of the above. Yeah, I mean, I think As Madison shared at the beginning of our talk today, that mindfulness can have really powerful impacts on ourselves as adults. And as much as we may wish or want another person's behavior to change, we ultimately cannot change another person's behavior. We can act it in certain ways ourselves that increase the likelihood of another person's behavior to change, but we cannot ever physically get into somebody else's body or mind to make them do anything. And so I think, offering the opportunity for your daughter to learn coping skills and practice mindfulness with you, and practicing mindfulness and other coping strategies yourself may have that domino effect that Madison was referring to at the beginning of our talk.
Great. What are the main differences between Linehan and McKay's teachings on DBT?
I am not familiar with McKay's teaching on DBT, so I would have to defer on that one, but that's an interesting question. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I'm actually not an expert on McKay's teachings on DBT. I think Dr. Marcia Linehan, who is the psychologist at the University of Washington who developed dialectical behavior therapy, she and her team of researchers have really done most of the studies examining the outcomes of DBT interventions on a variety of populations, but can't speak specifically to McKay's interventions and research.
Thank you. Do you have any recommendations for children's mindfulness DBT, CBT books?
Let me think about that. I'm going to do a quick search because I can actually visualize the book in my mind and where it's located in my office, but I don't have it right in front of me, so I will get back to you.
Great. What do you recommend for an SOS anger management for children? I could recommend breathing, but in these moments, my child resists and gets more angry.
Yeah, I think practicing different activities when the child is calm would be a good start so that you can figure out which different type of mindfulness activity works really well for him or her, so that you kind of have a go-to when the child is angry. The other thing I might recommend is if there are kind of signs where you know that they're escalating to anger, kind of getting that mindfulness activity in when the anger level is at like a 3 before it kind of escalates to a 10 could be useful.
So,
So
to that previous question about a parenting DBT book, so there is a book called Parenting a Child Who Has Intense Emotions. And then there's also a parallel book written by the same author, Pat Harvey, who I believe is a social worker targeted for parenting adolescents as well. So these books are utilizing dialectical behavior therapy skills to help children and teens regulate emotional outbursts and aggressive behaviors, and incorporate some mindfulness as well.
Great, thank you for providing that. This person wrote, I work with 3-year-olds. One of my kids gets super frustrated when her parents pick her up. She has a hard transition going home most of the time. Is there any suggestion for what I can do to help her with the transition from school to home?
I think it's, you've got the wonderful information of kind of knowing when the frustration or the outburst is going to occur. So mindfulness activities that are kind of catered toward that age, either the apps that we kind of have in our presentation or the books, could be a great kind of transition activity to do, if it's something that you could kind of integrate, even for the whole classroom. I know there are lots of videos with like circle time with kids that age, where they're all kind of doing a mindfulness activity together. So things like that might help them transition.
And also just looking at, I would say, given that it seems like there's a pattern in terms of when these more challenging behaviors tend to occur, looking at what are the antecedents, so what happens before the transition and what are the consequences. So as psychologists, when we look at behavior, we look at the ABCs, the antecedents, the behavior, and the consequences that may be reinforcing the behavior that you're concerned about.
Someone is asking if you can share the script for the gratitude guided meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give our community connection staff that link, but I can also say, so it's from the Greater Good in Action Science Center at the University of California, Berkeley. So if you can literally just Google search Greater Good in Action gratitude.
Great. Another question for you both. What age do you recommend for my child to start practicing mindfulness?
I mean, you can start practicing mindfulness with your children at any point. Honestly, for me as a parent myself, I found myself starting to do mindfulness even shortly after I had my child. And it just started to kind of naturally, he started to be naturally folded into my mindfulness practice too, just by virtue of him being folded into our lives, period. So, I think you can start this as soon as you are interested.
Tremendous. What types of clinical experts should I seek out for appropriate mindfulness therapy treatment for my child?
Can you repeat the question, Mike?
Yeah. What type of clinical experts should I seek out specifically for appropriate mindfulness therapy, possible treatment for my child?
Madison, do you want to take this since you spoke a bit about the different mindfulness-based treatments?
Yeah, I think as you're talking to different therapists, asking them about the training that they have in mindfulness or in some of the mindfulness-based therapies that we have on a previous slide would be a good thing to ask them to see how much training or experience they have in those different techniques.
And I would say, I've worked with a variety of mental health and physical health providers. And there isn't necessarily a certification, if you will, about mindfulness and being quote unquote good at mindfulness. So, I, as Madison said, I would just ask the provider themselves. Many psychotherapists, so LCSWs, LMFTs, psychologists, psychiatrists may have more access to this kind of training just by virtue of the work that we do. But certainly, even within our organization here at CHC, I know our occupational therapists and speech language providers have also integrated mindfulness techniques in their practice as well. I think going back to this idea that mindfulness does not necessarily have to be formal or meditative or a formal yoga practice in nature, I think lends itself to be potentially something that is quite generalizable and easily accessible to people who are interested in growing their practice.
So another question, do you have any book recommendations on books that are similar to Dawn Hubner's workbooks for kids.
Let me think on that as well. Unless Madison.
Yeah, I don't know of anything off the top of my head.
We'll get back to you.
And if anyone has any last questions that they want to ask, we will be concluding in the next 5 minutes. But another question for you guys, how do you help kids stay mindful with heightened anxiety, mental health challenges? And how do we help children with a specific learning difference during COVID-19?
I think practicing mindfulness on a regular basis and integrating it into the child's schedule can be really helpful. I know for many people, when we get anxious, it's really hard to kind of even recognize that we're in that state, to think, oh, I should be mindful right now. So kind of having times during the day where you're just habitually engaging in this practice can be helpful, because we don't always recognize when we're kind of at that state of anxiety where it gets really difficult to integrate these practices.
Yeah, I think especially considering where we are at now with our current circumstances, I think, you know, the level of stress and anxiety has been heightened across the board. And I think just acknowledging that, sometimes labeling that, and talking about it more explicitly, in terms of just talking about, hey, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling more stressed, may bring a level of attention to an experience that other people in your household are also likely experiencing. And sometimes the act of just labeling it can actually just bring the level of intensity down. The tricky thing about anxiety and stress is that it manifests very differently in every person, every individual. So when someone is feeling anxious, it may come off and it may look like anger or irritability. For others, stress and anxiety can be manifested more as physical or somatic experiences, or like pain in your neck or your back, difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating, GI problems. And so I think just slowing down enough to allow yourself to not be perfect during these times, and that it's okay to not be on your A game 100% of the time, may be a practice of self-compassion in and of itself.
Thank you for that. Someone wanted to add a suggestion for a children's book called When Sophia Gets Angry, Really, Really Angry. It deals with intense emotions that a child goes through and the time she gets to be mindful as she works through it and notices the world around her. So thank you for that comment.
Thanks.
Yeah. We can do one last question. What are some best practices for remaining mindful in the midst of trauma?
I don't know about best practices, but I'm glad that you asked that question, because kind of experiences of chronic trauma kind of have that same stress response, but on that like low or high intense and long-term level, it can have negative physical health outcomes. And so honestly, I think there are different skills that I know we teach in some of our therapy sessions that have different acronyms within dialectical behavior therapy that kind of teach us to, I think the acronym is STOP, so like take a step back, examine the situation. There are also things that you can do to kind of help regulate your physiological reactions. So like putting your face in ice water actually kind of helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system and helps you get to a place where you can kind of integrate those mindful tools. But again, kind of integrating a mindfulness practice into your daily life so that it becomes like a more natural response to experiencing that stress can really be a game changer.
And also when thinking about the experience of trauma, if it was a single episode or several repeating episodes of stress, I think before engaging in any mindfulness activities, connecting with a provider and getting some basic psychoeducation about about what trauma is, what the reactions to trauma can be, and how that looks different in children and adolescents versus adults, and then as part of an evidence-based treatment for the treatment of trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder, guided coping strategies and learning how to utilize coping strategies when you might be triggered by trauma reminders is really helpful. And so I would, definitely connecting with a licensed professional before really engaging in mindfulness activities specifically for trauma, because you may inadvertently be triggering more intense trauma reactions, and that likely is not your intention when trying to incorporate mindfulness.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to be with us this evening, and thank you to all of our attendees for joining in on our webinar. We really appreciate you being with us. Our telehealth services, I just want everyone to know, are available. If anyone has any questions or wants any more information about our telehealth services or additional services that we provide, you can go to chconline.org. Again, we do have a survey, and we are grateful to be able to have these sessions mostly for free, thanks to our generous donors. And everyone should be receiving an email with the survey link if you registered for this session. And I also provided it in the chat. So thank you again. And thanks, Patty and Madison. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.